Hey, this is Warren from Honed by Jones. Wanted to come on YouTube this morning and make a video about tips for sharpening at farmers markets or doing pop-ups. So I have a workshop. This is my home workshop. It's in my garage. This is where I typically sharpen. Most of my, I would say 80%, 90% of my business takes place right here in what I call my U-shaped galley. So I've got a U-shaped galley here with belt sanders, and then my Tormek, and then I have this big workbench that I mostly keep open and for when I need it, except for I often bring my Edge Pro Bevel Tech over here and use this in this area. The garage door is over here, and my customers come up the driveway, and I meet them with the garage door open, and that's how I do the bulk of my business. But once a week, I also sharpen at a farmer's market up in the Lake Tahoe area, and I also twice a month do what I call pop-up sharpening. I kind of took the pop-up sharpening idea from Steven Sharpen's LA Knife Sharpening. He's the only sharpener that I see on the internet that's like a, well, before I digress into that, I'll say that so this is my main sharpening area here in the U-shaped galley. So there seems to be a few different kinds of sharpening services out there. There are people who have workshops at their home, like me. That's one style of sharpening business. Then there are people who are completely mobile, right? So they're in a van, a truck, whatever, and they go to each customer's location, whether that location is to their home, sharpening knives, or maybe they're in a van and they're going to barbershops and salons and or animal grooming locations, and they're sharpening at those locations in their van. And then the other kind of sharpener might be a farmer's market sharpener. So those could be kind of the three main types of sharpening businesses that you'll see out in the world. And then of course there are hybrid sharpeners who, maybe they sharpen some in their home workshop and maybe they sharpen at a farmer's market, like me, or any other variation of those three that you could think of. But there's also another kind of sharpener that I see, and I really have one main example of that, and that's what I was starting to mention. That's Steven Sharpens from LA Knife Sharpening. I think you can check him out at laknifesharpening.com. He has a YouTube channel. I don't think he's posting too many videos or any videos at all anymore. Maybe some shorts now and then, actually. I think he still posts shorts. But he's what I would call a pop-up sharpener, meaning he's not mobile in the sense that he goes from one house to the next, or from one barber shop or salon or animal grooming location to the next. I think his entire business model is doing pop-up sharpening, so setting up an easy up. He's also a user of Kalamazoo 1x42s, so he brings those. He sets up, I think, outside of a butcher shop and several other locations throughout the week, and he's there for several hours at a time, and he has those locations preset and on his website so that people know to bring their knives there. And then I think on his website it says, like, you leave them for an hour or so, and he'll text you when they're done, and then they come back and they pick them up. So those are kind of like the four main styles of sharpening services that I see out there. And then, of course, you could combine those in any way that you wanted to set up your sharpening service. So, and sorry if you hear my dogs barking in the background. Our poodle, we have a pit mix, and one dog is a pit mix and one dog is a poodle, and the poodle tends to bark at everything. So you may hear her barking in the background right now. But anyways, so what I wanted to talk about today is the components of a sharpening business that are sharpening at a farmer's market, or tips, I should say, for sharpening at a farmer's market or for doing a pop-up. And I think the first thing that one needs to decide if you're considering sharpening at a farmer's market or doing these kind of pop-up sharpening things is are you the type of person who wants to be sharpening in public? When I'm in my workshop here, my U-shaped galley, I have control of everything that's happening here. I've got the garage door shut right now. I don't have to deal with customers walking up on a regular basis unless I schedule drop off and pick up appointments, so I know when people are coming and when they're to pick up or to drop off. So I don't have random customers walking up to me. But if you're sharpening at a farmer's market or you're doing pop-up sharpening, you can be in the middle of sharpening a knife, say on your 1x42 belt sander, and a customer can walk up to you while you're in the middle of sharpening that blade and ask you a question, and you have to decide, are you the type of person who wants to sharpen in that way? Do you want to interact with customers in public while you're sharpening? And if you are that type of person, then I think doing farmers markets or pop-ups will be a really great idea for you. I'm going to get to the tips real quick, but the last thing I wanted to say was don't assume because you're doing a farmer's market or doing a pop-up sharpening that you have to sharpen quickly or poorly. What you can do, so in my workshop here, I sharpen all kinds of different things. I sharpen knives, scissors, garden tools, chainsaws, axes, hatchets, machetes. I sharpen a sword or two. The list of things. Oh, clipper blades, animal grooming shears, barber and salon shears. In my workshop, I sharpen all that stuff. When I'm at the farmers markets or doing a pop-up, I only sharpen knives, garden tools, and scissors, and sometimes axes or hatchets, because those are pretty straightforward too. So I do not do every single thing that I sharpen in my workshop. I don't do them when I go out to do farmers markets and pop-ups. And what that allows me to do is, instead of lowering the quality of my work, it allows me to focus on the things that I can sharpen efficiently. And if a customer walks up to me and they ask me to sharpen something that I know will take too long and that I know I'll feel rushed in sharpening, I'll tell them, hey, I can't do that. I can only do that at my home workshop. I cannot do that for you here at the farmer's market. And 99% of the time, they completely understand. I explain to them why it would take too long to do at the farmer's market or at the pop-up, and they say, I totally get that. I'll bring it to your workshop. So that's the way I handle that. That allows me to use my 3-machine progression for knives, which is what I primarily sharpen when I'm at farmer's markets and pop-ups. It is precise. I use Cliff Curry angle guides on my belt sanders to adjust the angle, so I can do precise, efficient sharpening, and I don't feel rushed, and I can do a great job on their knives, and I don't have to sacrifice the quality of my work. I just simplify my work so that I'm still efficient. Okay, let's get to these tips. So I already said the first tip, which was make sure you're the right kind of person who wants to be out in public. I'm kind of an omnivert, meaning I feel like I'm an introvert and I'm an extrovert. I like to be out in front of people. I also like my quiet time. So I don't mind standing there talking to customers while I'm sharpening. I actually really enjoy it. That's the extrovert part of me. The next tip I would say is that oftentimes when people ask me about the weather with regards to sharpening, they're thinking, oh, he's going to be sharpening outside, he's going to have to deal with rain. Rain is not my biggest concern. I have two 6-foot tables and a 4-foot table at the market. If it starts to rain, I have a plan. I will take my machines and I will take any equipment I'm using and I will quickly shove them underneath the tables, so that the things will not get wet, destroyed, rained upon. I always carry an extra tarp in the car just in case I might need that as well. So I'm prepared for rain. I will tell you what my biggest headache is when I'm out sharpening at a farmer's market or doing a pop-up. It's wind. You want to be prepared for wind. If you're using an easy up, which is what I use every time I do a farmer's market or a pop-up, you want to think in terms of weighting that thing down in a way so that, here's what I don't want to have to do. I don't want to be in the middle. Let me grab a knife. I don't want to be in the middle of sharpening a knife and see the corner of my Easy Up lift up while I'm sharpening. I don't think I'll be able to stay focused on this. This machine is spinning at 1700 RPM. I don't want to be holding something against a machine that's sharpening at 1700 RPM while looking out of the corner of my eye to wonder if that corner of the Easy Up is going to stay down in the wind or not. I live in the high desert in Carson City, Nevada, in northern Nevada. We get winds here. I go sharpen up at Lake Tahoe. Sometimes we get winds up there. So I make sure that my Easy Up is weighted down so that I don't ever have to worry about the wind affecting it. I overweight it on purpose so that I don't even have to think about that. It's not a concern. The other thing I do is when I go to the farmer's market, I tend to bring along these blocks. I forget what they're called, but they're blocks that welders use to hold things at 90-degree angles. They're very heavy. They're very dense. If I've got paperwork, my sign that says what my prices are, it's underneath one of these. If I've got something else lightweight that needs to be weighted down, another informational piece of paper, it's weighted down so that I don't have to worry about it. If a customer signs their name, I have little pieces of paper that customers sign their name onto, and I put little, I have little plastic bins, and people put their knives in them. Actually, they're decent sized plastic bins. People put their knives in there, and I put their name with a piece of paper. I immediately take their name and put it underneath the knife, so I don't have to worry about that blowing away. The wind has always, my signage is well secured to my Easy Up. I have a double-sided sign, and it's well secured to my Easy Up to make sure that I don't ever have to worry about that blowing away or flapping around. I don't want to be sharpening a knife while I'm simultaneously being hit in the head by my sign as I'm working. That seems like a terrible idea as well. So think about the wind. The rain, of course, is a concern, but if you're bringing tables to the event, you've got a place you can hide your stuff underneath. The wind is a whole different story. I've been at events where I've seen Easy Ups blow away, and it's a mess, and I can't imagine being in the middle of sharpening a knife and having to deal with my Easy Up trying to blow away from me at the same time. So plan for the wind. That's my number one tip for the physical setup at the farmer's market. Another tip would be to have good signage. I think it's super important to have... I have a sign that's at the back of my booth. It's a Honed by Jones sign. I should have unrolled it. Hold on one second. I actually have it right here. I can grab it. I didn't realize that I had it so close by. So I actually have a pretty large double-sided sign that says Honed by Jones on it. I'm not going to unroll it all the way. But the reason I got it double-sided was because the customers walking up to my booth can see who I am. But it also shines out to the street behind me, or shows out to the street behind me. And anyone driving by can see my business name and that I'm sharpening at the farmer's market there because the back of our booths face towards the main street that people pull up to the farmer's market on. So now I'm advertising both ways instead of just advertising one way. And at my local print shop, getting a sign double-sided does not cost twice as much. I think it was like it added like a quarter or a fifth more to the price than getting a single-sided sign. So it was totally worth it. I would think about shade. So I'm moving on to the next tip. I've talked about wind. I've talked about having good signage. I would think about shade. I have a big straw hat, full-size straw hat that's hanging up right outside the frame here that I sometimes wear at the farmer's market. Also, my Easy Up provides some shade, so that helps as well. I also sometimes bring this little fan. Oh, well, this is another tip. Check the weather that day before you go to the farmer's market and see what the weather is and plan accordingly. So sometimes if I know it's going to be hot and not that windy, I'll bring this little fan and I'll have that with me at the farmer's market, and that way I have a little airflow within my booth. There's also those cool fans that you can get that have the misters built in. Next summer when I'm doing farmers markets, I'll likely get one of those, or I think I might get one of those. I might just use my regular fan, but I might get one of those mister fans and kind of put it over at the far corner of my booth so I can walk over and mist myself with that, or mist my customers with that as well. I might put it out front. I don't know. I'll figure it out when I get the mister fan. So think about the weather. That's another tip. Engage with your customers. I probably should have said this tip first. Too many times I walk by a farmer's market booth or a pop-up and the person is sitting, pretend this is my phone, the person is sitting in the back of the booth like this, looking at their phone, not even looking up, not engaging with customers. My question would be, why are you there? Why are you at the farmer's market? If that's your personality, that you don't want to... Oops, I just knocked over a dustbin. Or not a dustbin, a dustpan. No big deal. So my question is, why are you at the farmer's market? If you're not the type of person who wants to engage with customers, and that's what I started this video out at, if you're going to sit in the back of the booth with your head down, looking at your phone, my suggestion would be just don't even do the farmer's market. That's not who you are, it seems like, right? If you're not a person who wants to engage with customers, today I plan on there's a lot of people who bring dogs to the farmer's market that I do. So today I plan on bringing dog treats. I've been thinking about it for months and I keep forgetting it every week, but I finally added it to my farmer's market list to remember to bring dog treats to the farmer's market so that when people walk by with dogs, I can draw them over to my booth by saying, hey, does your dog want a treat? And if they say no, no problem. But if they say yes, now I've got an interaction that's going on with that potential customer that's not just based on me trying to sell them on having their knives sharpened. Knives sharpened. I can't believe I didn't start with this tip. So I sharpen at a farmer's market up in Tahoe that's a 45-minute drive away from me. I go on the Facebook page of the community that the farmer's market is held in. And every week, either the morning of, so I did it this morning, this is Thursday morning, August 8th, so I posted this morning on the Facebook page of the community that I'm going to be sharpening in. Or I do it the Wednesday, the night before, but every single week I post on there, hey, I'm going to be at the farmer's market. And oftentimes I do it as a little educational post. Yes, I can sharpen serrated knives. Yes, if you have an inexpensive knife, it's still worth having it sharpened. So I use my post on their Facebook page for their community to let them know that I'm going to be there, so that then instead of just what used to happen because this is the first summer I've done a farmer's market, the first few weeks I was there, the first couple of weeks really that I was there, people would constantly walk by and say to me, oh, I'm going to pick up this dustpan. The first couple of weeks I was there, people would walk by and they would say, oh, I wish I had known you were going to be at the farmer's market. I would have brought my knives. So I started posting on their Facebook page for the community that I'm sharpening in, so that they would know I was going to be there, they would remember I was going to be there, and now regularly people bring their knives. And I hear a lot less people saying, hey, if I would have known you were going to be here, I would have brought my knives. I don't hear that as near as much as I used to. That also works for the pop-ups I do. I sharpen at a local brewery. So the local brewery has 2 locations. I sharpen at each of those locations once a month. And before the week leading, sometime late in the week, because I go there on Saturdays, late in the week before I go to the brewery location, the one here in town is the second Saturday of the month. The one that's 20 miles away from me is the 4th Saturday of the month. So like on the Friday before, the Saturday of, the Thursday before, I post on Instagram and in Facebook that I'm going to be at the brewery, and the brewery also posts to their social media accounts that I'm going to be there sharpening. That way people know to bring their knives and they can hang out and have a beer, and I'll sharpen them while I'm there, and they know I'm going to be there, and I don't have to hear as the people are walking by me, oh, if I had known you were going to be here doing your pop-up sharpening at the brewery, I would have brought my knives. So why do I sharpen at a brewery? Because I think that's an unusual one, for an unusual place to sharpen. I sharpen at the farmer's market every week. I've spent this whole video talking about how I sharpen at the farmer's market every week. One of the challenges of sharpening at the farmer's market is, even though I have this efficient belt sander sharpening setup, so I go 120 grit Cubitron, I go 600 grit Trizac, I then go to a leather wheel. I use Cliff Curry angle guides here, so it's a very efficient system for sharpening. That's my farmer's market jam right there. That's my farmer's market setup. I often still only have like 15 to 20 minutes to sharpen someone's knives. So I don't get to relax a lot at the farmer's market. Often in the first couple hours I'm there, I'm just moving. I'm sharpening knives, I'm taking customers' payments, I'm answering their questions, but I'm just moving. And sometimes for the first 2 hours I'm at the market, I barely get a break to take a sip of water. So I wanted to also sharpen somewhere that was a more relaxed environment. So I thought, where do people go where they just hang out for an hour or two and they're not in any hurry? Cafe, a brewery were the first 2 places that came to mind for me. I went and I talked to my local brewery. They were super into the idea. They wanted to support my local business because they are a small local business just like me. They were super into the idea. And as soon as I opened my mouth to suggest that it was something that we could possibly collaborate on, they said yes. They said, when do you want to start? Do you want to start this week or do you want to start next week? So the advantage now of sharpening at this brewery is that when people show up with their knives, they have no expectation that I'm going to finish it in 15 or 20 minutes. Their expectation is they're going to drink a beer with a friend, maybe 2 beers with a friend, and however long that takes, then they're going to walk back over and they're going to say, hey, how's it going? Are my knives done yet? And I'm going to say, yeah, they're done. And they're going to go, great. And then they're going to pay me for them, and then they're going to head home. There's no pressure. There's no stress. I'm still using this same setup, so I'm not being lazy. I'm not taking my time. But it just gives me a little more breathing room than I have at the farmer's market. Okay, so that's a lot of tips. Let me look at my list here. I sit up front, shade, good signage, efficient setup. Oh, I have a chalkboard that I bring. One of the main questions I would also get when I first started going to the farmer's market was, how does this work? So now I have a chalkboard sign. I actually lost the chalkboard, so I'm going to use a dry erase board today instead. But I've had a chalkboard up for weeks that says, I sharpen while you shop. So when people come up to me at the farmer's market, they say, how does this work? I say, oh, if you want to bring your knives back next week, drop them off, stroll around the farmer's market, enjoying fresh bread, sample a coffee, buy some smoked salmon, whatever, buy some vegetables, buy some fruits, all the farmers markets things. And then by the time you've strolled around the market doing that shopping, your knives will likely be done. And then we can do the payment, and then that's how it works. And that's how I explain it to people. People love it. It's low stress. It's low pressure. They don't have to stand there the whole time while I'm sharpening. It makes it really straightforward and easy for them. And this is at a pretty small farmer's market too. This is at a farmer's market that maybe has a total of 20 booths, and that's it. So it's not one of those huge big city farmers markets that can have like 50 to 100 booths at it, at the really, really big markets. So so people will make their way around pretty quickly, even if they're shopping. So I think those are all my tips for doing farmers markets and pop-up videos. If someone else, what did I just say? I said doing farmers markets and pop-up videos. What I meant was doing farmers markets and pop-up events, sharpening. If anybody else has tips for working at a farmer's market or doing, I thought of one more. In between my machines when I'm at the farmer's markets, I have systems like this to hold people's knives. I've seen people who work at farmer's markets who just take the knives and put them in a pile, and then they go to their next machine and they have another pile, and then they go to their next machine, and then they have another pile. I like to use these type of guys where you can kind of keep the knives organized like this while I'm sharpening, and I find this super helpful. And what I do is I have a plastic bin. I have my plastic bins at the beginning, and then I go left to right, and I won't stop sharpening a knife to do something. I won't stop a piece of my sharpening progression to talk to a customer. I'll ask them to let me finish that progression. So if I'm sharpening this knife on my 120 grit Cubitron and someone wants to come up and ask me a question, I say, yeah, just give me 1 minute, let me finish this knife, and I'll totally stop and talk to you. So it starts out on the left of the 120 grit Cubitron. I'm sharpening it. I'm halfway through sharpening this knife on the 120 grit Cubitron. I'm going back and forth doing my passes. Someone comes up to ask me a question. I say, please give me another 30 seconds, another minute, and I'll be right with you. And then it goes on the right side of that machine that has the 120 grit Cubitron on it. If they gave me 7 knives, they come back now, and I know that the 6 knives that are over here are unsharpened on the left side of the machine, and the 1 knife that's on the right side of the machine, I think I said that backwards. The 6 knives that are on the left side of the machine, I know those are unsharpened. And the 1 knife that I've placed on the right side of the machine, I know that knife is sharpened because I use a left to right process through the steps of my progression. And I'll only place a knife to the right if I know that it's fully made it through that progression. So that's another tip. So and then post on social media ahead of time, your own social media, even if it's not on the page of the place where you're going to sharpen. I still post on my own social media as well that I'm going to be at a farmer's market or I'm going to be doing a pop-up. Every once in a while that helps out as well. This is Warren from Honed by Jones. I said I was going to do more hands-on sharpening videos, and here I am talking again in a video. Sometimes you just got to do what you want to do. As I got into the sharpening business, I found that it was frustrating that there are not a lot of how-to videos on how to run your business. You can find a bazillion videos on how do you sharpen, how do you remove a burr or something like that. You can find a bazillion videos on that, but people actually talking about how to do this business and do it well, there are not a lot of videos on that. The last thing I'll say before signing off is there are, though, a ton. I would say there's probably thousands of videos on YouTube by people who are crafters who work at crafts fairs. That's where I went to. When I decided I wanted to do a farmer's market or do pop-up sharpening, I couldn't find those how-to videos on YouTube. So I went to videos by people who make crafts and who do craft shows, there are literally thousands of videos by those type of people on how to be a craftsperson working at a crafts fair, and it turns out a lot of those videos are applicable to what we do as sharpeners working at a farmer's market or a pop-up event. The last thing I can say is comply with your local regulations. If you need a business license, well, the farmer's market will tell you. If you go to a farmer's market, they'll tell you what's required to get in. They'll say, oh, if you want to do sharpening at our farmer's market, you might need liability insurance and a business license and what have you. Just ask the manager of the farmer's market. They'll tell you what you need. Comply with that. My main regulation is I use a Honda generator, a little... You can't see it. Once again, it's out of the frame. I have a little Honda generator that I run every week. And the one regulation that the fire marshal required is that my generator needs to be 30 feet away from my booth. At least 30 feet from my booth. No problem. There's a little parking area, tiny bit of a parking area that isn't used. That's about 30 to 40 feet from my booth. So I just put the generator there. I run an extension cord over to my booth. It's really easy to set up. So that's the way I handle that. That was the main regulation that I had to abide by in order to have a sharpening booth. All right, whew. This is Warren from Honed by Jones. I can't think of anything else. I'm sure as soon as I finish this video, there'll be 4 other ideas that pop into my head. Hope that was helpful, and I'll catch you on the flip side.